Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Push from 2009. I can't just say push, so I always have to say push or some goofy thing of saying the word of the name of the title, but I said push anyways. So, this of course is a 2009 film you can see on Tubi right now, Tubi. Really, this is a film basically about psychics that have these kind of psychic abilities, powers, sorts, to do a number of things with their power that they are to have. We, of course, have it to where they explain a bunch of different kinds of people in this movie, but they then go on to do every single bit of it all in one film. Really going on to say that this movie was probably meant to all be what it is in one film, because it basically shows all the bells and whistles all in one film. And I'm assuming, weirdly, they kind of tee this up for there to be a sequel that never happens. It's probably one of those where, like, Warner Brothers, or because this is a DC Comics film, isn't that weird? They thought that this movie was, I guess, possibly going to do like a 3-movie film, but then never, never went past that one story. I can say that I have fun with this film. I love the concept because still to this day, it feels very original. It feels like we're not heavily mimicking this movie at some point. And we do every once in a while get to see certain movies that might deal with psychic-like power, or might have people that might have these abilities that are to be quasi-similar, but very rarely do we get it all in one film like this does. Usually we, of course, have like a movie like Next, where Nicolas Cage is a psychic, and they go on to try and figure out how to use Nicolas Cage's power to their benefit in that story. And we have several movies where they do experiment on certain psychic ability people, like the movie Dreamscape with Dennis Quaid. But yeah, but we don't, again, have this all in one fell swoop of a film. But let me know in the comments below if there is a movie that probably does, like, all do this same kind of thing all together, because I would like to see stuff like this. I like this kind of concept. So, with that said, teeing it up, what is this movie about? Because without a doubt, some people might be interested, because they're like, ooh, a Chris Evans movie, ooh, a Dakota Fanning movie, because maybe you haven't seen Dakota Fanning in a fairly long time, because that makes a lot of sense, because Dakota Fanning did a lot of kids movies at some point, and then she just kind of fell off the map, and then she did this movie, and then again, she like fell off the map, and then I think she has been doing some stuff fairly recently, but more than likely you may or may not be able to recognize her. So what is this movie about? So, we really have it to where we have these psychics that are to be called watchers. People who can go on and magically tell sometime in the future what is to happen. Some of them are so good they can see years in advance, and sometimes some watchers can only like see glimpses of things. Like we have Dakota Fanning's character, who's Casey Holmes. We of course have Nick, who of course is to be a guy who can move things, who's a mover, is what they call him. And so we have him, of course, most of the time in this movie having like 2 guns kind of like floating in the air, and that's usually what he does through most of this film. And like, you can't help but think that that image just looks really cool. But there is this kind of like looking like there's a gun on a string kind of thing that where like the gun is consistently weirdly moving, and it looks goofy, but like it is what it is. It seems that most of this movie is to be done in Hong Kong. We have people talking Cantonese through some portions of this film, so not all of it is 100% English, but really, I feel that the parts that are Cantonese are kind of slim compared to the overall film. It doesn't hugely affect it in any way. And the ones that have the psychic ability are the one, both Nick and Cassie were the one I was going to focus on because mainly they are to be the main characters. We have both Carver and we have both Kira, who are to have this push ability, which I guess is the title screen of this film. This push ability that is to go and implant thoughts into a person's mind, making them think something and pushing them to think that it's true. And so we kind of have that kind of person where we have this kind of forced thing to make people like dance the hokey pokey if a pusher really wants them to. And so we just have it where a pusher can control a certain person either via their mind or just take control of them. So that creates for an interesting story here. So how would I grade this movie? How would I go on to talk about this film, and so on and so forth? Well, I would say that this movie is like it's a fun kind of unique thing that you still don't heavily see to this day. So in my thought process, this movie is a win. This movie is something that I would recommend people seeing, just because it's a one of a kind, a thrill that people will probably enjoy. The only thing on the negative side that I would probably say for this movie is kind of like a jumbled mess of stuff. And really, it is, like, I guess I would call it easy to follow because it's fairly slowed down. But still, it's just like, okay, how is it that we go on from going and finding this girl to getting this injection to like to getting all of this stuff, and it still kind of bugs me to this day that they're telling us where the story is to progress to next for a sequel that never happens. Again, this must have been, or if I didn't say this, this must have been one of those where they immediately thought, yeah, this is going to be a 3-movie deal, and it never did. I think it's probably one of those where they thought, man, like, technically this movie was so cheaply done that they thought, man, they're probably going to make their money back. And they just probably never did. So with that said, let's just go into spoilers. Let's just go into that double 5-time territory. Push. Let me know if you've ever seen this movie, or let me know in the comments below if you're interested in watching it, because it's conveniently on an app for absolutely free, or you can go through any other means to go and watch this film. If it's conveniently on Amazon, if you have it in your DVD collection, you want to re-push that out, then without a doubt, go ahead and rewatch Push. So, with that said, let's go into that double 5-time territory. I'm going to try to wrangle in this movie as much as possible, because I feel like there's going to be some point here where I hope I can remember everything, because this movie has a lot for a very, like, slow film. Slower than I've been used to watching lately. I just got done watching The Dark Knight, and it's like, cut. Like, oh my god, like, there's a lot of cuts in this movie. So, this one is much slower than I've been watching. I'm like, hopefully I can get all this down. So with that said, let's get down to it. Let's go into that. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So, in the very beginning of this film, we have, of course, Cassie, who's telling us Dakota Fanning's character. I almost wanted to say Dakota Kai because really that's what it sounds like I wanted to say here. So Cassie Holmes is going on and telling us that in 1945, Nazis had decided to go and take certain people that had the gift of a ability of sorts, a psychic ability, like a mover, a pusher, a bleeder, a stitcher, uh, a wiper. Yes, a guy goes in and wipes it. No. Wipes your memory. Maybe also he goes and does a double tuck. I don't know. Depends on how much you pay him. Anyways, so we go into this film, and so it seems since the Nazis had decided to go on and desperately try to figure out a way to win the war that they were to be involved in, I guess the U.S. was to go on and realize that they need to up their psychic game also. So we, I guess, had eventually a psychic war, because heaven forbid we have anybody with real legitimate superpowers in this story, because a psychic ability would probably be good enough. So let's go on to this. So we, of course, have it where Nick's father doesn't have a name, and neither does young Nick besides Nick. But it seems the good thing about this is we have it to where we have the order of people that appear within this film, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the fact that that happens, because I'm like, yes, this makes this movie a lot easier for me to talk about. So normally there's some IMDb stuff where it's a jumbled mess of just crap all over the gosh darn place, and I'm like, oh, there's like 30 extras before I get to one main character. Great. I love scrolling down for a million times just to find one freaking name. It's not annoying at all. It's true. So we go on and we have Nick, and we have Nick's dad going and scrambling into this apartment or this hotel. And so we, of course, have Nick's father telling Nick to try to figure out a way to have him not have any watcher know where he's going, so Nick can go and scramble through without being followed by some watcher. So Nick's father is to go into this one room and have Nick go into this ventilation shaft that takes him out to this room to go onto this hallway where Nick is to scramble into this place where he is to go on and see his father's room being ransacked by the Division and Henry Carver. And so Henry, of course, is to go and kill Nick's father, and says, like, well, that was a waste, because Nick's father had real potential here. So we go on, and now some time has passed, and Nick, of course, is much older, and so we, of course, go on here and have Nick going and desperately needing to make some quick cash. Nick is going on and figuring out with his magical power how to roll the dice in a perfect way for him to win at this dice game. And so Nick goes off to try and play this game, and he is to roll this dice, and the dice just does not work perfectly, to the point of Nick now having to run away from this one guy who is to want to beat him to death. So Nick is to scramble back to his apartment, and let's put a pin in that. So we, of course, go on and have Kira Kira Hudson, who is to take this injection. She's to take this injection, and I guess she's the only psychic or psych-ability person that is to survive this injection, because I guess there's a rare amount of people who can take this this injection to, I guess, amplify their power or be able to strengthen their ability. So Kira is to awake from this injection, and she goes on and pushes a guy to help her get out of her restraints, and then she goes on to run off, and Carver chases after her, because Carver with Victor is to say here that's like, well, like, she's the only one that has survived this. She's our patient zero, so we got to figure out how exactly she had gone on to like survive this. So now Kira's like running off, trying to go and hide away from any of these people. And so now we get back to Nick, who, of course, is going on here, and he is being found out by these sniffers. These guys who are to be able to sniff an item of Nick's and track where his whereabouts are, like know exactly where he is. So we of course have these two guys, who is Agent Mac and Agent Holden. Agent Holden goes on and is to tell Nick, it's like, well, yeah, it seems like you've been in several different locations. Both, of course, these agents are working with the division, and they found him, and so Agent Holden is going on and saying to Nick, it's like, well, yeah, it seems like you were in Malaysia once before, and you were in a number of other locations, which I can't remember. I only know the Malaysia one. So, but they somehow were able to track him off of certain buildings, and that led them to Hong Kong here. And here's the thing. So at some point we have it where some people are speaking Cantonese, and also, not to offend anybody, but we also have it where Nick is to say that some people are speaking Chinese. And I'm like, okay, so, like, and they say it's Hong Kong. I'm like, okay, so that's interesting. Again, not to offend anybody. Like, I was just like, that's what they eventually talk about in this film. So Agent Mac is to go on and take, of course, Nick's toothbrush, so that way they can keep track on him. They're not going to kill him or wipe him out or whatever. I guess they're going to use him for something. Whatever it is, they're not really told yet. So these agents go off, and so we, of course, have Cassie that appears in Nick's room and gives him a toothbrush, a green toothbrush, and is to go and open up this guy's fridge for some chicken. So all of a sudden, Nick is like, "You aren't gonna eat my chicken?" Like, no, no. So you Cassie, for taking my chicken. You anyway. So I went too long for that joke. So Nick goes on, and so we have a tour. He's like, who the heck are you? And so Cassie's going on and showcasing that she's a watcher to Nick, knowing that she was going to meet up with him and that he was going to need a toothbrush. And so he's like, oh, you're one of those. Like, so it seems that Cassie doesn't always get things correct. And so she was hoping that she would get things correct sometimes, because she's a second gen watcher like Nick is a second gen mover. So we had Nick's father who told Nick that there's going to be one girl that is to give Nick a flower. And once this girl goes and does that, Nick needs to go on and help her because it'll be the fate of their people, so to speak. So Nick and Cassie are to go on and go and eat dinner and have this kind of noodle food or whatever. Nick is just disinterested in eating this girl's food, even though she's buying. So Cassie, of course, is asking for Nick's help and is to go on and kind of say what she is to need Nick's help for. At some point, we want Cassie to go and rescue her mother that Cassie realizes is still alive. And I guess Cassie's mother was this huge psychic that I guess the division is afraid of. So they're going on and trying to keep her locked up because this psychic is unsafe. So we go on, and so Nick is not interested in anything that Cassie has to offer here. It seems that she's going up against the division, and Nick's like, no, I'm not going to go up against the division. That's like the division. That's a suicide mission, basically. So Nick just starts to walk off. So we, of course, have Cassie who's telling Nick to not worry about the people that are going and chasing after him, to chase after him for money. Like, don't worry about that. The only thing that you should be worried about is the Watcher and the Bleeders that are going to come for you at some point in this film, because that's what's going to happen. So we have both Nick and we have both Cassie, who are eventually going on to, like I said, get attacked by this Watcher and these two Bleeders who are to blast kind of like a black canary, these kind of screams. And we can, of course, have these people scream so loudly that they burst blood vessels and they kill people and they can explode heads and all kinds of horrific things here. So these Bleeders and this Watcher, of course, are tied to the Pops family, and so really they have no actual names. They're just called Pop's family, Pop's girl, Pop's son, or Pop's boy 2. Like, they don't have real actual names. So that's great when I'm going to have to describe them. I guess because really they're just called Bleeders, or they're called the Watcher. So both Nick and Cassie are running off, trying to run from these Bleeders that are screaming their heads off, and metaphorically speaking, and they're breaking all of these fish tanks. And so we have the Watcher going on and telling the Bleeders to go and break the big tank, which of course to make both Cassie and Nick fall over as they're basically thrusted with water that is to carry them. So both Nick and Cassie fall over, and so Nick's power is ridiculously weak, and we have Nick who goes on and is trying to chuck these knives at a wildly distant person to where they just fall to the ground, and the Bleeder's like, really? So we have Nick go and use his power to push Cassie to get her to get away. And so now the Watcher is telling the Bleeders to not kill Nick because like they'll still need him. So don't absolutely kill him. But the Bleeders do some real damage here, which leads Nick to arrive at this one place where there is to be this Stitcher who can heal people from any injury and so on and so forth. So this Stitcher, who of course is Teresa Stowe, or Stow? I'm going with Stowe because it looks like the spelling could be that way. This girl is to talk to Cassie, who is to also arrive where Nick is, and Teresa's to mention that this Stitcher is to owe Cassie's mother something, and so she's going to repay Cassie's mother by healing Nick here. And I'm like, okay, because we have it where like this psychic can go on and tell like years in advance what is going to happen. So like that's Cassie's mother. So Cassie's mother has gone on and done a number of these things way ahead of time, and not everybody, I guess, is to know about it because they're not that good of a watcher. So we have the Stitcher go and heal Nick, and so we now have it where, of course, Cassie is giving Nick a flower, and he's like, oh crap. Now I have to go on and help her. Ugh. So we now have Nick going on and seeing of course Cassie's sketches, and he realizes that there is one kind of place that he recognizes, that there's a lady that's in a martini glass, and we have Nick seeing what he used to say is an olive there, and Cassie's like, it's not an olive, it's a bead. Because we have Barber, or no, wait, maybe I should go and, maybe I shouldn't say that yet, because there's a whole part of that where I'm going to have to, so, yeah, let's put a pen in that. So, Nick is to go on into this taxi and head to this place to go and talk to a guy named Hook that is to make this bead, this little ball. So, let's get to that thing. So, the other thing that's going on here. So, Kira's going off and is trying to run away from the division, but we have two sniffers that go on and find Kira and grab her and put her in a car, and Agent Mac is going on and kind of smelling this lipstick, and he's like, yeah, I bet she puts this on like 10 times in one day. So Kira is telling Agent Mac that she needs to go to the bathroom, kind of pushing and using her power to force this guy to go to the bathroom. And so Agent Mac is telling Agent Holden that this girl needs to go to the bathroom, so we'll just take her into this this one random place to go to this bathroom. So we go and have, of course, Kira go to this bathroom. And so now that she's looking at Agent Mac through this bathroom stall, she goes on and uses her advanced power to force Agent Mac to think he has a brother, which he doesn't, and is to say that there is to be a man that was to kill his brother, and of course that man was Agent Holden. And so Agent Mac goes out of the bathroom stall and is to kill Agent Holden. And so when Agent Mac is to realize what he had done and the mistake he had done, he goes back to go and try and find Kira, and Kira is vanished, is gone, is disappeared. So we have Agent Mac regrouping with both Carver and Victor for us to have, of course, Carver saying that Agent Mac is relieved of duty, kind of thing. And Agent Mac's like, no, like, I can go and help you guys out. And Carver's like, well, you can help yourself out to a bullet in your gun. Because we have Carver who pushes Agent Mac's mind to say that the gun in his bullet, or the bullets in his gun are completely empty, and so he can go on and shoot himself, and there's no bullets in his gun because Agent Mac had took all the bullets out of this guy's gun for Agent Mac to think that. So we go on, and of course, I'm gonna pause here for 1 second. So Agent Mac goes, of course, and shoots himself. So Carver is giving Victor these beads. And so Victor, of course, is having these beads kind of float in the air, having us know that this guy is to be a mover. And it seems that he is a mover that is a little bit more skilled than Nick is. So it seems Victor is to go on and go to every single sniffer and psychic to go and try to track down where Kira is. So, hence why the bead. So now we go into this place, this restaurant, and so Nick goes on and meets with a guy named Hook. Hook, I guess, is to be this kind of fabricator, this guy who is to take a certain piece of paper and make $500 out of it, or 500 yen. We have Hook, who goes on and is to take a playing card and switch it to be a different playing card, as if this guy is to put on some magic show to some girl that he's trying to win over. Excuse me. So Nick makes it to Hook here, and the whole reason Nick is to realize for them to make it to Hook is so that way Hook can go and make this bead, this little thing. So Hook goes and takes this ring from one girl and is to make this bead, but it doesn't look quite right at first. He adjusts it, and we see the bead that Cassie had seen in her head. So we go on and we have Hook saying that he was with the division for 10 years, and after that he had gone and left the division. And so at some point, there was one point, I think, Hook used his power because he was desperately trying to buy some gift for his wife for her birthday, to turn around and find out that his wife was dead from a car accident, of which that she doesn't drive. So really that was just a lie. Because supposedly they told him to never use his power again, and he did for one time thinking that they wouldn't know about it, for all of a sudden his wife to turn around and be dead. So Hook is like, well, you guys, I'm out. Like, I'm going to go and do my own thing and have the freedom of being able to make all this kind of fabrication that I want to, because they basically took my wife away from me. So we then go on and have Nick and Cassie, who go to a woman named where is it? Emily Wu. They're going to this girl because she's a professional sniffer, and it seems that when Cassie is to give Emily this bead, saying that, like, for some odd reason, this girl would know what this bead means. So Emily is to just be like, well, like, do you really think I'm going to help you? And so Cassie goes on and draws this, the picture in the background, and she goes and draws the time, and she draws the bead, saying that this girl is going to help them in 1 minute. So Emily goes on and says, like, okay, well, here, like, this guy was to give me this bead, and so now I'm going to go on and help you instead of help this other guy, because Victor is kind of shelling all these out. So Emily uses her power, and she is to find that Kira is to be at this pier. So it seems that we're not the only ones knowing that Kira is to be at this pier. And so, like, it's time to just kind of make it snappy with all this, because we have everybody and their brother trying to track down Kira here, so, like, gotta make it snappy. So we go on and have Casey and Nick making it to this pier. We have Kira, who is going on and trying to meet with this couple who have a car, and Kira's trying to get them to, like, hey, can you like, give me a ride? And then she pushes and forces them to think that they're old friends, and like, oh, hey, yeah, like, yeah, we're old friends, right? Like, yeah, I'm sorry I haven't called in such a while. And it's like, yeah, like, they don't even speak the same language. How are they old friends, weirdly? I don't know. It doesn't quite work out, but it is what it is with push power, I guess. So so we go on, and all of a sudden Nick is to realize that Kira is the girl that they're chasing after, and Nick has had a really good history with Kira. And we go on and find out that both of them had spent some time together in Coney Island. And so we have, of course, Kira, who goes along with Cassie and Nick to this apartment. And so Nick is assigned to hire a shadow so that way Kira can't be found. And so we have a guy named Pinky, who I guess is to lose part of his pinky from being tortured by the Division, hence why he'll probably never work with them. So we have Pinky that goes on and tells these people, it's like, well, hey, like, I want 10 grand a night, which I don't think he ever actually gets paid doing any of this job. He's like, hey, 10 grand a day to shadow this girl, uh, and yeah, so I'll do it. So we have, of course, Cassie, who goes on and gets food. At one point, Cassie is saying that she needs to go and drink alcohol because she thinks that she'll be a better psychic if she goes on and does that. Where, of course, Nick is like, no, like, I don't want you to drink alcohol. Like, if anything, like when they're with Hook, he's like, I don't even think I want her to drink anything with caffeine in it. So Cassie's to go on her own and go and get some food and then go and get alcohol. So we of course have Pinky, who's realizing what's really going to go on here, and so Pinky is to leave the room because he can shadow the girl outside of the room. And Nick is like, hey, where are you going? And we have Pinky, who's like, well, I don't have to be a watcher to know what's going to go on here. But bang it a bang bang. Because we, of course, have Kira, who's going and washing herself down. She's trying to clean herself up. And Nick is just kind of tempted to go on and go into that room to kind of rekindle what they are to have been missing. Because it seems that Kira had forgotten a lot, but the only thing that she didn't forget is the time with Nick, because Kira had gone on to go to a wiper after she went and escaped from the division. And the only thing that she, of course, is to have seen on this mirror is the thing of 4100 and then the name Nick. And so Kira is to write the word Nick, realizing that it's in her own handwriting. So now we have Cassie going out here, getting food and whatever. And so Cassie is to draw a number of things. She is to draw that both Nick and Cassie are consistently to be shown that they're both going to die at some point when they go on and do this mission. And she goes on and draws a number of other things, but the thing that she draws the most is that they're both going to die. So we go on here and we have Cassie, who's talking to Pops's watcher, and Pops's watcher is telling Cassie, it's like, well, hey, like, you're going to die. And I guess I have pictures of how exactly you are going to die. And the watcher just has a bunch of pictures of a tiger. And it's like, okay, that's weird. That makes no sense. So we have a tour, of course. This watcher is saying that she's a better watcher than Cassie is. And so it's like, well, anything that she's to do here to try to prevent them from what they're doing is kind of pointless. So, like, Pops' watcher just kind of walks off, just realizing, like, yeah, like, you guys are going to die anyway, so it's really just pointless for me to go on and try to prevent you from, like, what you're doing. But, so, Cassie goes back to the apartment drunk, and she is to, of course, hate that Kira's with them, because every single time Kira's with them, things are getting worse now. To where Cassie is to draw her mother's death, and Cassie would never usually draw her mother's death. So, really, we have just Cassie, who is to draw Kira's shoe, and Cassie's like, why am I drawing her shoe? I guess Kira's shoe is to have this key that is to be the number 100. or 4,100. So we go on and we have Nick who's like, okay, I think there's going to be somebody that's going to have to like help us with this, and I guess that'll have to be Emily because Kira has no memory, and so like whatever they're doing to try and jog her memory isn't really all that working. So we of course go on and have Emily go and take this key and figure out where the locker of this thing is and probably what's inside of it. So we now go on and have Nick, who is having Cassie figure out like what the case looks like and what's inside of it, and it's to be this injection thing that is to be the power amplifier injectional thing. So we have Cassie supposedly going on and drawing this out, and so there's a bunch of different cases, there's a bunch of different needles, and we really just have it to where Nick is trying to confuse the other Watcher, because Nick is wanting to, of course, try to make what they're doing very unpredictable, so that way they can go on and beat everybody, even Pops's family. So Pops's family goes on and is to make it to this apartment building, but all these guys have already left. So, like we have it where the bleeders are thinking that this Watcher is to be like useless, that like this is going to be a disappointment to their pops, and so it's like, oh well, like they're already gone. So Nick goes on and is to have this master plan that Nick has to go on and write down what everybody is doing and tell them to do it at certain times. And then he is to have to go to a wiper to get rid of 2 hours of memory, so then no one will know what they should be doing at a certain time, not even Nick, who had wrote down what they were all supposed to do. So we go on and we have Nick, who gives Kira this envelope and tells her, hey, when you start telling the truth, open up this envelope. And she's like, well, how will I know when exactly to open this up? I'm like, well, that's up to you. So, and then Kira goes off because Kira goes off to go and be taken by Carver and Victor, because Pinky is to go and hand her over to these guys, because when Nick is to go on and want to take down Carver and Victor himself, because it's like, well, there's only one way to solve this, and killing both these guys might just do it. So Nick goes off to the restaurant where both Carver and Victor are at and uses his power to kind of float these guns up in the air. So Nick then floats these guns down to these guys, and it's pressed against their temple, and it's kind of floating in the air, and it's kind of this weird juggle, like string-like act that's going on here. So we, of course, desperately want Nick to get his vengeance for his father's death, but we, of course, have Carver who's saying, it's like, well, hey, like, killing me won't stop you dying. So, like, it's kind of inevitable that, like, you guys are not going to succeed. And so we also have Carver that's telling Nick that Kira desperately needs a certain kind of medication to help her through the struggles of her new power, and that Carver here is the only uh, Carver is the only one that is to have this injection. So it's like, hey, if you hand Kira off to me, like I can save her before she dies here because she's a valuable commodity. Of course, like it's something that they need anyway, so they'll keep her safe. So Kira starts getting more and more sick, obviously, and we had Nick realize that Kira is kind of hiding the fact that she is starting to bleed uh, from Nick. So to the point of Nick finally seeing Kira start to bleed from her nose, and so he's like, okay, so Carver was right. I need to go and give her and hand her off to Carver so she can get injections, so she can kind of be able to feel better and not feel sick and die. So Kira gets handed off to Carver here, and Pinky gets handed off some money, and so Pinky goes and reads his first instructions, and his first instructions is to hand off the money to Nick so he can pay off this wiper. And so really Pinky is just like, well, I knew I wasn't going to get paid just yet. I knew I wasn't going to be getting some payoff. It's like, of course. So Nick goes to this wiper because we have, I think, we had somebody go on and try to figure out which wiper Kira went to. So I think Pinky had to figure that out. So Nick goes on and is to head to this wiper and say that the wiper had a watcher come to him 5 years ago saying that some American woman was going to come to him, and so she did. And so the wiper is to tell Nick that this psychic or this watcher didn't pay for Nick also, so you better pony up the dough. So Nick is going on and saying that he needs 2 hours of memory to be wiped. And he's also asking this wiper, hey, I'm not going to go and like completely forget who I am when I wake up, am I? And the guy's like, it doesn't work that way. Like it wouldn't be that huge, massive memory loss. But there's a possibility that can happen with a wiper that can just wipe everything out. And that's what kind of happens down the road later. So we have Nick go on and is to lose his memory. So we have a bunch of characters going on and doing a bunch of side missions here. And so, like, let's get that all out of the way. So Cassie is to go on and do a number of things, but the main thing that she, of course, is to go and do is to hide. Hide and put these guns at a certain place. So Cassie goes on and is to have it where we have this Stitcher that is working for the Watcher and these bleeders. And so when Nick is to wake up from his memory loss, he is supposed to go home. So Nick ends up going home, and all of a sudden the Stitcher is there, and she is trying to hurt Nick because now that she's working with these other people, she's like, well, like, I hate to go on and have to, like, kill you, but, like, I'm getting paid. So we go on and have Nick, who is to use these 2 guns that Cassie was to hide somewhere, and so Nick is using these guns against this Stitcher to have her go and heal him, so that way uh, he can go on and continue doing what he's going to do. And like, he does not go off and kill this Stitcher. It's basically just like, well, uh, let bygones be bygones. So we have Cassie, who is to go into a supposedly random direction, but it's not all that random because the Witcher is to find out exactly where she is. So the Witcher continues, or the Witcher. I've been seeing the Henry Cavill movie too much, or the Henry Cavill show too much. Watcher, that's what I meant. So Cassie goes on to this one restaurant, continues to head into the back of this restaurant, and so all of a sudden Cassie's to find out what the tiger means, because there's a bunch of tiger boxes that have this tiger symbol on it. So it's just a box that has a tiger on it for whatever reason, whatever that product is. So all of a sudden the Pop's Watcher is to go on and pull a gun on Cassie, and so the Wiper ends up going and wiping out this Watcher's memory, and so Cassie's to walk off, and the Wiper says that her mother's proud of her, saying that was kind of like one thing that Cassie, I guess, was to hear for that moment, that her mother would actually say to her, because her mother would know good and well because of how powerful she is. So she's like, oh, great. So we also had the one moment where Pops' family was to go on and get the suitcase and the injection, because Hook was to go on and be this safety inspector to go into this building, because we go on and we have the group before realize that there is to be this one building that is to be shadowed and is to not be located when Cassie is to try and draw all these buildings. All of a sudden one building is weirdly gone. Pinky is to mention how like it doesn't make sense for a building to get shadowed, because like that's never or been shadowed, because that doesn't ever happen. So he's kind of weirded out by why they're kind of hiding this building from everybody. So, and that's the one thing that I forgot about, with probably a number of other things. So I don't know, I'm doing okay. That's like, once we get further on into this movie, there's like a jumbled mess of all this stuff that goes on. And so we go on and we have Hook, who is to make it to this locker and go and get this briefcase with this injection. And so we, of course, go on and have eventually where the Pop family is to go and get this briefcase away from this group, and are to go and hand this over to these people. And we go and find out that Hook was to use his power to make them kind of see this briefcase and to see this injection, and it's not what it really is. So, and then we have, of course, this person not really think that they can rely on the Pops family anymore, because Hook is to go and give this briefcase to Cassie, and Cassie is to say it's like, well, I guess it's like the briefcase looks similar, and so like Hook uses his power to go and make it black and to go on and and make it look like the thing. So Hook ends up handing off this briefcase to Cassie, and so Cassie goes on with it for eventually the Pop's family to go and take it from Cassie. And so pushing on. So, because I've already resolved that thing, that they take it from Cassie to go on and make the mistake of like, oh, well, this is a ruse. So, and I think that was, that's exactly when we, of course, have Nick go home, and I think the Stitcher ends up hurting him and taking the case away from him. And I think that happens in all one fell swoop of a thing. So, Kira. Kira is to go on and find out from Carver, because he pushes this into her, that she was to be an agent working for them. That she, of course, was to have this badge and everything made up. And so Kira is to believe this. And we have Carver who's like, well, hey, let me give you back your memories. Let me push all these memories back into you. So we have at one moment where we have Kira on Carver's side, and so when Nick and Kira meet back up, Kira is to say that the time that Kira and Nick were together in Coney Island was all a lie, was all just a push that she had put into Nick's brain to get closer to him. So, but we'll get to that. So, we go on here, and we, of course, are right back to this locker. So I'm like, okay, why are we going to this locker thing twice? This makes no real sense. So Nick is to, of course, go back to this locker and is to unlock this thing to showcase that the briefcase is still back in this locker. So we, of course, have Carver there and Victor there, and Kira, of course, is there at this building. So we go on and have these guys thinking that they have the injection, but all of a sudden Pop's family comes in and is to stop these guys from going on and like having this be theirs. Pops wants to keep it and have it be his. So we also have like a whole, like, I think there's a whole moment where Nick goes on and is to be with Carver and Victor and Kira, and Hook is to call Nick, and Hook is to tell Nick to take the injection, to take the drug, and for also Hook to get on the line with Carver. So I think that's right when they all go to the locker and they go and get the briefcase out. And so that's when all of this starts to happen. So we go on and have this shootout where, of course, Victor is to stop all of these guys from shooting Carver. And so we go on here and we have Kira who controls a bunch of Pop's guys and is to be like kind of these soldiers that are going on and gunning down a lot of these enemies. So we go on and have Carver doing a pretty good job at taking down Pop's people. So we now have it where Nick and Victor are fighting one another, and it gets to the point where there's a bleeder, one of the bleeder twins, that goes on and is to try and attack Victor and Nick while they're fighting. Victor goes on and is to jab a thing of bamboo into one of the bleeder's necks and kills him. And so we go on and we have Pops who goes on and is to try to bleed his way, because he's a bleeder also, to scream at both Victor and Nick, which what they do is they end up going on and taking this whole like bamboo part and just go and like kind of just crash it onto Pops, killing him off. So, and I think that cover, like, I think there's still one bleeder, but I guess he ends up getting killed also for some reason I can't quite remember. So, watch the movie. So we go on here and Kira is to go and have some of these soldiers that are working for Pops fall to their death, because Carver is to make it to Kira, and Carver's like, oh my god, man, you're really doing it. You're really using these guys and using your power to go and like create your own army. And so it seems that Kira can't exactly be trusted by Carver still. So Carver goes and says like, hey, have all those guys fall to their death and then I'll trust you. So Kira does what Carver is to ask. So we go on and we have Nick, who is to eventually go on and kill Victor. Because, of course, we kind of have Victor kind of struggling with a number of these either bleeders or just a number of other things which are to eventually take him out. So Nick runs off to, I think Victor was also to be jabbed with some kind of bamboo also, and he was to get killed off also, the same kind of way of that one bleeder. So we go on and we of course have Nick making his way to both Kira and Carver, and so we of course end up having of course Nick go and take out this injection and inject it himself, and Carver's like, yeah, go ahead and inject yourself, like you're doing me a favor, because it gets rid of this kind of loose end out there, but also it's probably going to kill you because there's a severe rare case of people being able to survive this. So it's like two birds with one stone. It kills the host and it kills the drug. So Nick goes on and is to take this thing and is to fall over and pretend he's dead now. Oh, he's dead. So Carver and Kira are to now go and walk off here to go on a plane and think that this is all over. And so Cassie goes on and meets up with Nick and says like, oh, hey, yeah, like you didn't really inject yourself. So, like we technically won. And so it's like, okay, great. So Nick is like, well, what did I really inject myself with? And she says soy sauce. And he's like, oh, great. That's great. So because that whole thing was another ruse, because Hook was to go on and use his ability to just kind of make this thing go away. And so Cassie is to toss the real injecting thing. And so what they're thinking about doing is trading the injectional thing with Cassie's mom. So that way they can make that trade. And I guess they don't do that in this movie. That is to be some sequel part of whatever. So all of a sudden, Kira is with Henry on this plane. And so we go on and we have Kira who's just like, you know what? Kind of tempted to go on and look at this envelope that Nick was to give me. So Kira goes on and opens this envelope to see the picture of both Nick and Kira at Coney Island, and the picture says kill him and see you soon. So Kira goes on and is to look at Carver and is to force him to put his own gun to his head and kill him. And so then I guess Kira is to go and control probably the plane and go on and make her way back to Nick and so on and so forth. Happy ending had by all. So that's really the only thing that we are left to just see in this film. And so like I wish there would have been like some kind of end credit scene to kind of just give us some kind of like last bit of something, realizing that there was going to be a sequel out of this, because I think they should have really just wrapped this up all in one film. But like they were already doing so much in one movie, and I'm assuming they naturally probably like figured how much money they were saving doing this film, but it just wasn't enough. Like I think this movie eventually became a a cult classic. Um, but really, it's just like, well, this is just a one-off thing that, yeah, it's fun to watch. Like we had the one line where, of course, Chris Evans, Nick was giving, like, "Hey, um, are you gonna be fast enough to uh, push something into me before I can pull the trigger? Are you gonna are you gonna be fast enough to push into me before I can pull the trigger and shoot you?" Um, like that was kind of like an interesting line delivery and whichever. So with that said, we had the one moment where also Victor was beating the crap out of Nick in that restaurant, and so Carver goes on and is to realize that killing either Cassie or killing Nick was still going to be a waste of time, because Carver at that point was always thinking that he was going to win. And there is nothing that either Cassie or Nick could do to change that, as Carver is to know what Cassie and Nick's fate are. So like that was an interesting thing to kind of just plot that out. So with that said, hopefully everything is technically covered. If anything, there might have been something here or there that I probably forgot about. I'm sure there probably is. Because I don't tend to do this movie in a perfect way of whatever, but like any loose ends and whatever, let me know in the comments below about this, how you felt about this film. I know this is an hour and 13 minutes thing, and I like to try to keep these short, but this one had a lot going on and a lot of moving parts, and so that's why things end up getting way longer than they should be. Like freaking like The Dark Knight was 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my god, that's an hour and a half film or 2 hour and a half film, and I'm like, oh my god. Um, every once in a while, there are like certain videos and certain things where there's a lot that I want to say about a film, or there's a lot that like there's a lot to just uh, dissect and whatever, and so sometimes just stuff takes longer than it should. Um, but with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.